David's been good all day. Here it is again. Okay, some space. Oh, just tough. He's picking him up. He's up in the air. Oh, he's soaring. Oh, my gosh. The Lions host the undefeated Seattle Seahawks on Monday Night Football in Week 4 of this NFL season. This is the fourth year in a row these two teams will match up. Motor City Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions are riding an 0-3 streak, but this time they'll take them on in prime time. Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Johnny Gaz. Thank you for returning for another video. Lions and Seattle will match up on Monday Night Football, September 30th, 8:15 kickoff on ESPN and ABC. Let's go through our full game preview. We'll start with our headlines and storylines. We'll look at the key matchups, the X factors, and what the differences in the game will be. At the end of the video, I will give my final score and prediction, so stick around. Let's go. Before we deal with those pesky birds, please hit that like button. It's the best free way to help out the channel. I'd also love it if you'd consider subscribing. We just surpassed 2,000 subscribers thanks to you guys. That notify bell is the best way to make sure you don't miss any future videos. There is a membership option available. If you hit the join button on any one of my videos, I will walk you through how you can become a part of the family. Thank you guys so much for your time. Let's dive into Week 4. Let's kick this game preview off by looking at some of the headlines. The Seattle Seahawks enter Week 4 in this Monday Night Football matchup with the Detroit Lions as one of two NFC teams left undefeated, the other one being the Minnesota Vikings. New head coach Mike Macdonald is off to a fantastic start with the Seahawks. They bring in a solid running game, head up by Zach Charbonnet and the injured Kenneth Walker. Geno Smith has been steady but shaky as their quarterback through the first 3 weeks of this NFL season. Seattle brings in one of the NFL's best defenses so far, but they're going to have a true test now in the Detroit Lions as they face subpar competition so far this season. On the other side, the Lions bring in what looks to be a much improved defense. They've really carried the way for the Lions here over the last several weeks, and their victory last week over the Arizona Cardinals. Questions still remain for the Lions on offense. They've been able to move the ball, have heavy yardage numbers, but have not been able to convert that into points. It'll be interesting to see how they adjust against the Seattle defense. Seattle holds the recent edge over the Detroit Lions record-wise. They've won the last 3 matchups since Motor City Dan Campbell has joined the organization, and overall have won the last 6 games against the Detroit Lions. Both teams enter this Week 4 matchup with heavy injuries. Let's go through the injury report in detail. Let's start with the Seattle Seahawks and some injuries concerns they have on their offensive line. They were already without tackle Abraham Lucas, who was on the PUP list for a knee injury and will be out for most of the season. Last week, tackle George Fant also suffered an injury and has been placed on injured reserve. With a knee injury himself, he will be out for this Week 2 matchup in the next several weeks. At running back, Kenneth Walker has missed the last 2 weeks, but the coaching staff has come out and said that they feel very good about him playing in this Week 4 matchup. He is probable. Seattle has 2 linebackers, Uchenna Nwosu and Jerome Baker, both probable. One has a knee concern and Baker with a hamstring injury. Again, both look like they will play in this Week 4 matchup. Last week, both Leonard Williams, the defensive end, and defensive tackle Byron Murphy both went out of the game. They are both listed as questionable. Williams with a rib concern and Byron Murphy with a hamstring. Will have to continue to monitor those injuries. And the Lions, who seem to have a growing list coming off of this tough matchup last week against Arizona and the Cardinals. Let's start with the edge, Marcus Davenport, who was placed on injured reserve. Very unfortunate with a tricep injury. He will be out what looks like the remainder of the season. Very unfortunate for him. This will be the 3rd year in a row he may miss an entire season. Also last week, linebacker Derek Barnes suffered an injury to his knee. He has also been placed on injured reserve and will be out for the majority of the season. Safety Brian Branch is currently in concussion protocol. Word from Lions camp this week is that he's doing pretty good. They do have the extra day, obviously, before the Monday Night Football matchup, and we will continue to monitor for his status. He is determined to be questionable at this time. Also leaving the game last week was defensive tackle Aleem McNeil with a shoulder injury. He's been considered day-to-day and has been listed as questionable. Also, tight end Sam Laporta, who suffered a lower ankle injury in that matchup against the Cardinals, also listed as day-to-day and questionable. Another concern on the offensive line for center Frank Ragnow, who suffered a pectoral injury, and he is determined to be week to week. Now, he has already had several seasons where he's had nagging injuries. This seems to be another one of those where he's going to have to make the determination each week if he's able to go. My guess is he sits out this matchup in week 4. I'll keep you posted as we get closer and closer to Monday night, but that is something to keep our eyes on. The Lions are also monitoring Terrion Arnold for a hand injury, Levi Onwuzurike, Dan Skipper, Alex Anzalone, Ife Melifonwu, and Isaiah Williams all are probable for this matchup here with the Seattle Seahawks. Let's discuss what I believe will be the key matchups in this Monday Night Football game. You got to start with strength on strength, and that is the Detroit Lions offensive line versus Seattle's front 7 on defense. And that's really been the calling card for Seattle so far, is what they've done on defense. They've held opponents to 14.3 points per game and are coming in with 11 total sacks. That's the most of any Detroit Lions opponent so far this season. We talked about the Lions, that they may have potential injury with Frank Ragnow up front at center on their offensive line. And if that is the case, they will most likely shift over Graham Glasgow from his guard position over to center and have Coyote Owasika, their backup guard, take Graham Glasgow's place. And I don't think they lose much except in maybe pass protection. And that's really what Seattle has been good at so far this season. And that's something the Lions are going to have to focus on if they have to reshuffle up front. Secondly, I think the biggest matchup in this game is the Lions' defensive line against what looks like a depleted offensive line for the Seattle Seahawks. We talked about their injury issues at tackle, and that is directly where Aiden Hutchinson is going to be matching up. He is coming in with 6.5 sacks. His pressure rate is through the roof, and he is really looking everything of what could be a defensive player of the year. Seattle is going to have a tough time dealing with Hutch. Lastly, I think the Lions' revamped secondary against the offensive weapons, specifically the wide receivers that Seattle has. DK Metcalf is a physical presence, and the Lions were going to have a tough time dealing with him as they have smaller defensive backs. Him, along with Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think make up one of the better wide receiver rooms in the NFL, and the Lions are going to have to prove that they can deal with that. They've done pretty good so far in these first 3 weeks. Can they continue that in week 4? And I think those are your 3 key matchups for this Monday Night Football game, Detroit Lions versus Seattle Seahawks. And playing off of those key matchups, let's talk about who may be the X factors in this Monday Night Football game. Let's start with the Lions, and I think we got to focus on Hutch. He's off to a fantastic start in 2024. 6.5 sacks, leads the league, pressures on top of the league, his win percentage, everything is looking like a defensive player of the year. We talked about the injuries on the Seattle offensive line, especially at tackle, and that's exactly where Hutch is going to square off. This is almost the 4th week in a row where he's going to have a chance at a depleted offensive line on the other side to really make things happen. So be on the lookout for Hutch to wreck house yet again. On the Seattle side of things in the defense, look for someone in their secondary. I think like a guy, Devon Witherspoon, the man that the Lions passed on in a previous draft, to make some plays here. I think the Lions are struggling to find consistency in their passing game. They know they have Amon-Ra St. Brown, but it's past that where they really have questions. So I think the secondary for the Seattle Seahawks will have chances to make plays, and Jared Goff will have to be better to try and avoid that. Lastly, I think a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, you want to be on the lookout for him. I feel like when the Lions get away from their run game, or if their pass game starts to stall, they then tend to go to Jahmyr Gibbs as their playmaker. He can make plays as a running back, as a pass catcher out of the backfield, in a multitude of ways that they try to get him the ball. You saw last week with that fun hook and ladder play. So really any creative way that they can get him the ball. He has speed, he has power, he's shifty, everything that you want in a running back, and I think the Lions lean on him heavily in this Monday Night Football matchup. To me, those are your X factors here for Week 4. The difference in this Week 4 Monday Night Football matchup between the Lions and Seahawks will be the Lions' run game against Seattle's defense. I think the Lions have shown that they are willing to rely on their bread and butter and lean on their strength, that run game, to be able to have success. As their passing game in this mix starts to take shape, as they're able to put more points on the board compared to this yardage, I think they're going to continue to lean on the run game. And that's where Seattle has been susceptible. They're coming in very hot, but mostly in their secondary. They've held teams down to about 150 yards through the air each week this NFL season. But again, they're now facing off a Lions team who is much more potent than the 3 opponents they've played previously. Ultimately, the Lions will want to establish their run game early and often and then be able to work off their play action. And that is where I think they have the ultimate success. When they can get the run game going, the offensive line is humming, everything else can play off of that. Especially considering now they're going to have some injury concerns the Lions will have on their offensive line. I think they're going to want to lean on their run blocking versus their pass blocking. That's where Seattle has had success, getting to the quarterback in their pass rush. Losing Frank Ragnow, and we'll monitor that, may be the biggest issue for the Lions' offensive line. So how do they adjust? I think they go back to their strength. That is the run game, something that they've been able to lean on. To me, that is the ultimate difference in this matchup. Week 4, Monday Night Football, Detroit Lions, Seattle Seahawks. The Lions will be in their all-black unis for the first time this season in the ruckus crowd that is Ford Field. Should be a fantastic atmosphere. The current line is the Lions minus 3.5 points and the over-under set at 47. I think the Lions control this game up front, very similar to my preview against the Arizona Cardinals. I just think they have more strength on their offense and defensive lines. We went through all of the injuries, and that certainly will play a part in this game. And I'll continue to update you guys as we get closer and closer to this Monday night matchup. But I think ultimately the Lions' run game is the difference here. They use that and then work the play action as they work through and find the right mix to convert this huge yardage number into points. Jared Goff seemed a little bit more comfortable last week, but they still had a ton of questions coming out of that second half where they scored 0 points. So I think this week is kind of the week where things really start to take shape. They're going to have to battle through these injuries, show that they have better depth than they ever have in previous seasons. But I really believe they have more strength up front than what the Seattle Seahawks will bring. If they can contain Geno Smith, just like they did with Kyler Murray, I think the Lions will have success. And that's another big thing here is that the Lions now are able to lean on what looks to be a much improved defense. It's not just a flash in the pan. They've done this now for several weeks now where the defense has really carried the day. So if they can continue that along with an improving offense, I really think things are starting to take shape for the Lions. They have the early bye week following this matchup against the Seahawks and will look to get healthy as they get into the meat and bones of this 2024 NFL season. Ultimately, I have the Lions winning this football game with a score of 28-20. This would move the Lions to 3-1, and the Seattle Seahawks would then fall to 3-1. Who do you have in this Week 4 matchup? Can the Lions continue their momentum and get this offensive thing going? Does the defense carry the day for them yet again, or do I have this thing completely wrong? Do the Seattle Seahawks come into Ford Field on Monday night and get the upset? Let me know what you think down below. Talking Lions football with you guys is a true passion of mine. I cannot say thank you enough for all the interaction. If you dig the vibe here at Johnny Gas Sports, make sure to hit that like button. I'd love it if you consider subscribing to the channel. We're just over 2,000 subscribers thanks to you guys. That notify bell is the best way to make sure you don't miss any future videos. There is a membership option available. We've been doing all of our live play-by-play game reactions right there, along with our tier list, highlight reactions, a ton of other fun stuff, but I will always have that fun free content for you guys here on the channel. Thank you so much for your time, but more than anything else, make sure to take care of yourself and your mental health. That's more important than anything, and I want to make sure you come back and see me on future videos. Again, thank you guys. Have a fantastic week and weekend. Go Lions.